just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other.
Are you playing your own game, or are you playing someone else's? On today's episode of Truth Seekers, Coach Nick and I talk about how to achieve great things. We ask better questions to get better answers. We talk about the dangers of bad affirmations and the power of good ones. And finally, we talk about the bridge of beliefs, the journey of doing the extraordinary, being built upon the consistent actions of the routine. Don't give your future self your current beliefs. It's a great quote from Coach Nick I'm taking from today's episode. Have your ears perked up for this one. It was a good one. Enjoy this week's episode of Truth Seekers with Coach Nick Davies.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another special edition of Truth Seekers. We have a Coach's Corner prepared for everybody today, all our lovely viewers, Coach Nick Davies and myself, Coach Josh Greco. Coach, what is up?
Yes, good night, good morning, good day, good evening, good night. Or maybe start with good night, I don't know.
I would probably start with it just so people know that we're not going to sleep. Usually that's what we say before. Like, hopefully our podcast is not putting people to sleep.
I wouldn't be offended if people use it as a meditation, often to sleep, whatever.
Hey, as long as we get a view or a click, maybe you wake up and you had a great dream, leave a great review. Maybe that could be something.
Yeah, who knows, right? Who knows? Well, what's been the highlight of your week so far?
That's a great question. I've been thinking about this concept. I want to share it with you, and I know that we're going to get to a special place by the end here because it's already dawned on me how cool this principle is, how cool it works. So it's the principle of leveling up. All right, we've talked about this so many times, but I just had this breakthrough. Like, there's no real limit except ourselves or our belief systems. That's where the term limiting belief systems comes from.
Indeed.
But as I sit here today with what I've accomplished in my business and my personal life, whatever, I've overcome so many things. I'm at where I am today because at one point in my past, I wanted to be here. I helped create this. All right. And also, as I sit here today, I look into the future and there's some things that are, require some courage and some strength and some fortitude. There's some scary places that I want to go. But it's just so funny to, I don't know, it doesn't change the way I feel about the future. There's still things that that I'm like, well, I can't overcome that. Well, this is different. It's different this time. But it never is. It's just becoming somebody more, becoming a better version of yourself. So I just get so excited when I think about that or when I have these breakthroughs because it truly makes you believe or shows you that anything is possible. And as we continue to break down these barriers, these belief systems, like more things open up. So that's why it's almost hard for me to project out 5-10 years because I don't even know what belief system I'm gonna overcome next year or by the end of this year. So anyways, would just love to get your thoughts on this principle, this concept, because I know you've gotten to become pretty good at it. Just from my understanding of your coaching prowess and what you've been building. You built it very quickly and very efficiently. You have the foundation there and it's going very well. From my perspective, I don't know if you'd say the same thing, but just how you make sense of all this. And then do you feel that too? Like, where are you going? And what are you nervous about or scared or know that you have to overcome? Like, what's the next roadblock for you?
A little soundbite that popped into my mind as you were sharing that as well about that future self. Part of the reason why you can't see it is because you aren't that person yet. So don't give your future self your current beliefs.
Whew, I like that a lot.
That future self is not
is not manifest yet in reality. It is somewhere. The timeline isn't aligned with it yet. So part of the reason why you can't see it is because that person's not there yet. But it's the bridging of the beliefs. If you had a belief that said perhaps that you were the most prolific author in the world, and you were yet to put pen to paper, let's say, it might be a stretch. It is certainly a stretch in that belief system to go from unwritten to most prolific. On that journey, there are many different styles of those beliefs which create bridges for you to go across that huge cavern to that other side of what that is. Also differently, one step at a time.
So what would be an example of a bridge in my journey to become the most prolific author that exists?
Yeah, and a simple example for me, and I'll come back to that for a second, was the one that I share oftentimes about when I was training a lot of Muay Thai when I lived in Florida. My experience before that with working out, I've mostly been lifting weights. I never ran, didn't like running. I wasn't a runner. My belief was I wasn't a runner. I was told that in order to help my cardio in training Muay Thai, I should run a little bit, not much, just like 2 or 3 miles. For me, that was 2 or 3 miles because I wasn't a runner, but I had leverage on myself to start to take action. So I remember when I first lived in Jacksonville, I used to run around the block. It was like a mile, and no way I could run a mile without stopping. But slowly, after doing it for several months, I got to the point where I could go slow enough that I couldn't stop, and I'd be absolutely tired out by the end of it. And then I entered a couple of 5Ks, and I noticed someday someone asked me, like, how much running do you do? And I answered, well, I'm not much of a runner. So that's an example of a bridge belief going from I'm not a runner. It didn't go to I am a runner. It went to I am not much of a runner. So a bridge belief is just something that takes you along the journey so it might be, well, what is your belief right now? What do you believe about yourself right now in terms of your writing? Because we've got to have that anchor. So we know where the milestone is of most prolific author in the world. But where's the start point?
Yeah, so I might say I am not an author.
Yeah, and that's so cool, right? Because we're back to this sense of like the world is binary. It is not. It's not yes or no, I am or I am not. It's so many little layers in between that. Like, we tend to think about things like because it's easy, but it's not. I'm not an author. You don't go to immediately to I am an author, or certainly not to the most prolific. But it might be, I'm not an author, but I tend to write quite a lot. I wouldn't call myself an author, but I do write a lot. Then it might be through my writing, I expect that I'm going to publish something next year.
So let me ask you, it's almost like the chicken and the egg here. All right. So
yeah,
does my belief have to change first, or do I have to wait till I see it and experience it to really believe in it?
Yeah, and the answer to that is it depends. Because again, it's not binary. It's not binary. There's a balance to be had. Yes, do you need to change your beliefs? Yes, do you take new action? Absolutely. But if you say my immediate belief is that I'm the most prolific writer in the world, then the action that aligns to that you cannot see, because you're not in a position where the next step for you is the most prolific writer in the world, author in the world.
Yeah.
So if you make the belief too far away or the action too far away, then it just becomes ridiculous.
Yeah, well, that reminds me of a previous episode with Coach Stephen Bates, where he talks about like affirmations are dangerous because if you don't believe in it, then you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
So an affirmation that would not be suitable for me is I am the most prolific author. I shouldn't be telling myself that.
No.
But it's okay to use that as the target, right? So here's the thing. So I've been doing, been leaning into Miracle Morning, and affirmations are part of that. What might be a good affirmation for me that I can feel and that I can keep telling myself to progress along this path here?
I'm a better writer. I write more every day. Every day when I write, I feel better and better. Each day when I write my words, the clarity is more. Something which allows you to get the leverage of constant and never-ending improvement. That consistency.
Each day that I write, I am one step closer to achieving my vision of being the most prolific author. That feels much more right to me than I am the most prolific author.
Yeah. I mean, it's my goal to be the most prolific writer in the world. That's awesome. But it's not the same thing as I am.
Yeah. All right, that's helpful. Okay, so it's made up of a bunch of bridges. That kind of answers my first question. How do you make sense of this this path of progress towards knocking down these huge, they feel like these gigantic barriers or things that we are difficult to overcome. But it's like, it's in the intro. I think I say in one of the lines in the intros, there's no big things. There's little things that are compounded on top of each other.
Yeah, like, I've been doing a lot of work recently on how do I provide continuous, never-ending improvement to the value that I'm providing to my clients, and be consistent, because it's one of the key values that we work to, but also honor other values and beliefs, which are spending time on myself with my family, because by itself it doesn't correlate. It's like you can't be everywhere at once. That's why I spent a lot of time on thinking, okay, not what's the, how do I do this? Like, because on the surface it's, well, I either do all on there or I'm not. So that's been, again, that's been cumbersome. So going one step at a time is like, how can I add even more value to it? So ask better questions, get better answers is another start. Like, how might everyone win here? And then that's kind of the genesis of creating a way of that. If I'm not here, or indeed they can't, like if I have a scheduled time for a client and I'm on doing something which is sharpening the saw, or I'm on a family vacation, let's say, then how can we still keep that time, still keep the consistency, and add even more value regardless? Now that won't work long term, because a key part of coaching is having that person there, but it certainly allows you to bridge, and back to that word again, not the same context, but any gaps that might be there, and not just say, oh, okay, we won't work on this week, because that's dangerous. It's a slippery slope. But that's what's been, you said, what am I working on? Like that stuff, that concept I'm working on. How do I up my billing? How might I up my billing by 50% again this year, but also have the right commitment to my family and my creation time, whilst adding more value to my clients?
That's the best of all the worlds. You're creating an ideal life for yourself and for your family and for your clients. It's all encompassing.
Yeah.
I wonder if we might pivot a little bit, because there's another concept that's popping up in my mind that's related to kind of where you finished that thought. And it's this, it's why I do coaching, why I am a coach. I remember in my previous occupations, I was in sales, business development. I loved what I did, earned good money. Well, I didn't love what I did. That was the difference. I found things that I loved about it. I love connecting with people, and actually the people I work for were great at both companies. But it feels more purposeful. It feels like I'm making a bigger difference, because when I make a big coaching distinction, I co-create with a client of mine, there's a ripple effect into the rest of the world. And that's what I like to think about, because the value that we're providing, when you double down the value, when you increase that value for your clients, and when you spend time with your family and prioritize those things, it's the compound interest conversation. It's not, it just doesn't end there. There's a whole other level of things that we're not even aware about. Like when we finish a coaching call, right? It's a half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes they're an hour. What happens after that? Where do those people go? What do they take away and how do they influence people in their lives? Like there's this whole other thing that's not even considered, but that's the part that's like, I think that's what I like the most about what we do.
And the more value that you add, the more opportunity you get to add to people that are playing the game already at a different level. So then more connectivity they have as well. Therefore, it grows even more of a ripple effect, an immediate effect to coach someone directly in their team, the leader of, or the owner, or the founder, the CEO, immediate impact to their team. And then working with people in the team, and then having the ripple effect on that as well. It's huge.
It feels meaningful. It feels like we're not just helping people earn more money, right? Although that's part of it, but we're creating visions, we're creating bridges, right, for people to believe in their future, a future version of themselves that they want to be. And that's this is coming full circle. Like we are all creators. That is one of my core basic belief systems, because we create before we're aware that we're creators. We're still creating. We're maybe creating situations that we don't want. So that's why awareness is so key, is because you arrive at that. Okay, like if I could have it my way, if I accept the fact that I am a creator, what would I create? Like that, I think that's everybody's first question in that journey of awareness, or achieving something or creating a life that you want. There was a certain point in your life, Coach, where like you wanted what you're carving out now. There was also a point where you didn't know that you wanted that, right? And we could be going, way back into the annals of history. Although, this, I think it's ever developing for everybody. But that's a beautiful thing. I think that's the whole point of this conversation, is that the more that you achieve, the higher that you go, the more belief systems you shut off, the more glimpses into the infinite that you get to see. And so it's so cool to be in this space, is because the rewards are so much different, so much higher, so much more fulfilling at this level. And we're just scratching the surface. There's so much more after this. It just gets me so excited to think about that.
Everyone's playing their own game. Everyone that is playing, that we work with, is playing a game that they want to play. I can see a direct, a converse relationship between, in my previous lives working in corporate world, where people were there playing someone else's game. Sometimes well, sometimes terribly, most times in the middle. But it was really just something that they were playing because of a low reward that they were getting for taking part, and they didn't care about winning, or not enough to really have the stakes high enough that it would matter for them. And that just leads to it leads to half doing everything. It's half a life, it's half a feeling, it's half fulfilled, which leads to, oh, is this all there is? And no muscles built of actually you can create, to go back to your point. Oftentimes when I first start working with someone, especially, and usually this happens when it's someone in a team, so the company has given them coaching, and what a crazy thing that is, because when it comes to working with teams, one of the first things I always share is when the leader will say to them why we're here, I'll make sure that we cover, like, do you understand how valuable this is for you to be in this spot? What this leader has done for you here? Like, I know that we're here because of the business, but it's not about the business at the same time. It's about what you can take from this and create your life of your dreams. And everyone can do that. It's just not many people are associated to that. When you see sometimes people set out their goals that are part of those teams, and they say, we'll ask the question of something like, if you can have it any way you want it in a year's time, and think of it, any way you want it in a year's time, and they'll write on the form, I'm pretty happy with my life and I'd like to earn a little bit more money. Or something like that. I'd like my relationship be a bit better. And no judgment, as always. And that was a free ticket. Any way you want it. And so it just shows you that people don't believe in themselves, and they need to be reminded of that, because no limits. Everyone's a human, and human potential is pretty much without limits.
That's the cool part to begin to wrap up on. Just a few quick comments. So the analogy I got, the vision, somebody gave you a plane ticket, you can go anywhere in the world, and you decide to go to Florida or Texas. Nothing against those states, of course, but, there's great spots there, but just to play with the infinite, you could go anywhere, and you're limiting yourself by not knowing what else is out there, what else is beyond your limits, beyond what you could even fathom in your thinking. And like you said, no judgment, because I think that's also an acquired thing that you learn along the way, is that you begin to think bigger and bigger, because the stuff that you started with small, you figured out how to get, I can do this. It's there's a process to it. Success leaves clues. Other people have done it. And I wrote down a quote. You talk about taking part. We're taking part in someone else's game, and some people do it well, some people don't. There's a famous Conor McGregor quote. I wonder if you'll recognize it. He says, "We didn't come here to take part. We came here to take over." He created his own rules for UFC. Like he participated in a weight class, and sometimes two, but it was the Conor McGregor show that, like, he basically changed the way that sport was unfolding in front of people's eyes because of who he was, how hard he worked, the vision he had. On the surface, he might look like a cocky son of a bitch, but if you ever watch some of the videos of where he came from and what he envisioned and the trials and tribulations he went through, it's such a cool story to hear about how he got to the top. And he did take over. He didn't come here to take part. He took over.
Sometimes even in press conferences, when the president Dana White will talk about how well they did on that pay-per-view or that gate, they will say, it's the best gate we've had, pay-per-view gate, or the best gate we've had here. And then they'll say it's the best non-Conor McGregor gate we've had. It's his own category.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's crazy. But yeah, it's a good example, a really good example. And it's about the intentionality of it, because if you go back to the analogy of the plane ticket, you can go wherever you want, and you go to Florida. Like you said, nothing against Florida. I love Florida. But the point is the intention. Is it you go to Florida because that's all you know? Do you go to Florida because it's safe? Or do you go to Florida because you've been everywhere in the world and that's exactly where you damn well want to go?
Yeah.
So it's not as obvious as it might seem. So you've got to play. It's like, okay, just test it. It's like, is this really what you want? What part of it is it what you want? Do you know what popped in my head? I don't know why this popped in my head, but
You gotta share it now. Gotta share it.
I'll share it now. Our cleaners, when they come and clean, they leave the toilet paper like folded up into a little rose. I can't stand that. It drives me crazy. Why does it drive me crazy? Because now I've got to like unravel it, take it off, and I'm wasting this much toilet paper. And so I look at myself in that intention, like what's their intention? They want it to make it look like they've spent time, that it means something to them, that they're there and doing that, and to make it look nice. But it's completely lost on me in the sense. And so then I ask myself, what would I like to see? Another example, going to a hotel room and they've made like a little swan from the towels. Again, for me, I'm like, don't do that. I don't care about that. Now I've got to like unfluff the towels. Like, so what do I do with this thing? It's on my bed, so I've got to move. I appreciate the gesture and intention, but then I thought, okay, well, how would I like to see it? What sort of proof or evidence might I want to see for me that would show that they have been attentive in making the room? That was kind of helpful to disengage that feeling a little bit.
Last thing to wrap up on, so to piggyback that, I think of people who might get a bad rap that are very successful, that might show up and say, why is this this way? I asked for it this way. This is it. This is what I wanted. And I think they're just living the extreme version of creating the life, right? That they're so used to, they've grown into that identity of being creators. So that when something they've asked to be created, like that's part of their creative process, is getting other people or delegating or asking for something to be created for them, that when it doesn't happen, like that's the rocking out of the normal. So to make yourself like the new normal is being a creator with everything. Look at your environment, look at the toilet paper, look at the towels. Like, what are you not creating that, like you said, how would I want it? Well, start thinking like that. Start thinking like that about everything, not only your business and your family and your relationships, but like this piece of paper right here. Like there's so much trickle effect to all of this. And there's so much to improve. That's what makes it worth showing up every day. There's constant and never ending improvement, because there's never ending things to improve.
Absolutely. And so it's that knowing that there's no limits, but also got to know what you are committed to and what is your priority, because otherwise that can also drive you crazy, because there isn't a limit. I can't fix everything.
Might be a good place to leave off. There's no limit. But so I usually like to, we do takeaways a lot, but like some sort of inspirational thing that somebody else can take. What do you want? And we've asked this at the end of other episodes, but now that we've had this conversation, you might have a different vantage point. Like, what can you create? How would the toilet paper look if you could have it anyway?
Or where would you fly if you had that ticket to anywhere?
Yes.
Right, because then you might. I find myself with that question start to apply logic to it. It's like, well, do I go on my own? What happens to my wife and kids? Or do they get to come? And if they do come, then where I want to go might be different. And how long do I go for? And what does that mean for my business? Right. And so that's not the way that the spirit of the intent of the question, right? But you've got to think about, like, okay, how am I limiting myself by asking those extra questions on top? The value of the question is not what's the context.
Yeah, the more frames you put around it, the more you limit yourself.
Yeah.
Awesome, Coach. Yeah, brilliant conversation. Thank you very much for joining me on this special episode of Coach's Corner Truth Seekers. We'll see you next time.
Extra special.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction, so please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.